What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. Just kind of wanted to do a quick video here for you guys and kind of talk about some of the more pleasant surprises of the Colts season so far. I know over the last couple weeks, it's been a lot more of, talking about, the negatives of where we are. Everybody is on Twitter, right? Just bashing the head coaches, head bashing some of these players, just all sorts of things that are just making you, think negatively about this team. And I thought there's been some bright spots in this season that we can look back on that honestly makes me feel really good going into seasons beyond and into the back end of this season. So I'll go ahead and just start with a few guys here. So I think the first thing that we have to talk about, first name that everybody talks about is Carson Wentz, right? I mean, I don't think the majority of people knew just how good Carson Wentz was actually going to become. If you asked Cody and I if he would be this good so far throughout the first 12 games of being a Colt, even dealing with all that he's had to deal with, I would have thought that would have been insanely great for this team and what he's been able to do so far this season when it comes to, when you're talking about the lack of turnovers that he's produced, right? And throwing good touchdowns, has a good touchdown to interception ratio, is not costing us games, right? I mean, you could say that honestly, that second matchup between Tennessee, he had a lot to do with, throwing that one away as well. But that might be the only game this year where you can definitively sit there and say that Carson Wentz was one of the downfalls of the team. I mean, this season, he's not only been a good part of this team, he's been a lot of the reason why we've been involved in some of these games, and he's been playing at a very impressive level. Would definitely say he's playing at a really good level right now. He's not been great, but he's certainly not been average either. I would say he's right at that good level right now, and I'm impressed with what I've seen so far from Carson Wentz, and I look forward to seeing him progress even more because, you got to look at it. Coach Reich and this team has not had a quarterback that has been a part of this team and stayed for over a year. I mean, Brissett was the only one. Ever since Ballard's took over the team, Brissett's been the only guy that's played in multiple seasons. So, and of course, we know the limitations of a Jacoby Brissett. So, going forward with Carson Wentz, I feel very optimistic. I feel very happy about his progress and what he's been able to do. And I want to talk now about a couple of defensive backs that we've had that have really been good this season and have had to step up in ways that you kind of wish they didn't have to, but they did. Obviously, this season, Xavier Rhodes been dealing with a lot of injuries, right? And TJ Carey's been having issues, other guys getting injured. So, you look at your next best guys available, and those guys are Isaiah Rodgers and Rock Ya-Sin, right? And these two guys maybe at the beginning didn't start off super great, and Rock Ya-Sin's had a little bit more of a season to kind of come back and look on. But I would say right now, the way these two are playing has just been phenomenal. I mean, you look at it just the last 2 weeks and put them into perspective. The best receiver that these last two teams have had that we've faced has been their tight ends. And that was Dawson Knox for the Buffalo Bills and Rob Gronkowski. You look at it, I mean, Stephon Diggs, did have 2 touchdowns, but he was limited to 4 catches for 40 yards. I mean, Stephon Diggs wasn't changing the platform of that game, right? That's what you needed to do, shut down their best receivers, right? And even Emmanuel Sanders didn't do anything. And you look at it from the Tampa Bay side of things. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I think, combined for only 7 catches for like 45 yards. I mean, their two best weapons, their two weapons who, by the way, Chris Godwin's, I think, top 10 in the NFL in receiving yards, and Mike Evans, we know what he can do. You know, these are two elite guys, and the Colts shut them down. And along with the help of Kenny Moore, you know, you've had guys like Rock Yassin making plays, and you've had Isaiah Rodgers making interceptions, you know, beating guys to the route. You know, Isaiah Rodgers has not had a lot of time to adjust, but he's adjusting really, really quickly. And I know there will be some of you that watch this video and be like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's hyping up Rock Yassin. Look back to last year. I don't care about last year. Last year was last year. This year is this year. And so far, Rock Yassin has played much better, significantly better than what he did last year. He's cut down the penalties tenfold. He's actually anticipating routes and actually playing really solid defense. Okay, neither one of these guys has been amazing, but they've been really, really solid. And that is what the Colts need in this cornerback room, is some guys who are solid. You know, we've been talking about getting corners, right, in the draft. Might still end up being a thing, but with the fact that we don't get a first-round pick, what do you get? Who do you go for, right, with that option? So, I mean, it makes me personally, and Cody, because I talked with him about it, a lot more happy and I can relax a little more seeing the fact that these two guys have been improving steadily as the year's gone on. And the next couple of weeks will really be telling as to how these two guys are going forward. But it's really nice to see them stepping up and doing what they need to do, right? And they've both been really solid. And I like what I've seen from Rock Yassin and Isaiah Rodgers. Another guy that we mentioned, and it's a guy that had to take over for Julian Davenport early in the season, and that was Matt Pryor. You know, the Colts got a bunch of different tackles this year to try and step in while Eric Fisher was recovering from his Achilles. And obviously, we're still probably going to have to address left tackle at some point. But Matt Pryor has really stepped up when he was in there. You know, he was very solid on that right side of the offensive line. It almost felt like, at one point, you had Braden Smith in there. You know, when Braden Smith was out for half the season and Matt Pryor had to come in and step up, I mean, Matt Pryor was picking up the slack just fine. It felt great. They finally got the run game going on that side. They could protect him on that side, and they didn't have to put Julian Davenport in there anymore. We didn't know who was going to be in the mix of all this, but Davenport was atrocious. And thankfully, Matt Pryor, who we had no expectations for coming into the season, really stepped up and did what needed to be done and really incentivized his role at that right tackle position. So Matt Pryor is another one. And I think the last player that I'll talk about here is Taylor Stallworth. We had him on the podcast recently, and you know, they were talking about how his play has improved over the last few games. I mean, you know, ever since what was it? It was the Jets game. Yeah, ever since actually, I think it was even before that. You know, halfway into the season, Taylor Stallworth, who wasn't getting much time. Now Taylor Stallworth is getting some time with the ones. You know, Taylor Stallworth was a guy that was simply brought in for depth, mainly in the run game. And over the last mainly 5 weeks, you know, Taylor Stallworth has been getting involved, man, not just in the rushing department, but also in the pass department. I think he's had like 3 sacks over the last 5 weeks, and that's almost more sacks. That's almost totals his career stats coming into this year versus what he's doing now. I mean, it's a much better situation that he's been in, and he's been such a better player this year with the extra time and getting stuff done. So, you know, Taylor Stallworth, I commend him for being that backup defensive tackle to Grove or to Buckner and still going out there and doing what needs to be done and making a few plays here and there. It's really awesome to see. There's probably some guys that we missed. Obviously, we're surprised at Pittman. Pittman was really good this year, but we totally did not expect, him being where he's at now. He's been a very, very solid wide receiver for us, and we hope he continues to improve. Outside of that, guys, you guys can let us know if there's anybody else in there that you thought we should have mentioned, and let us know what you think of the players that I did mention. Thank you guys again so much for the continued support. That'll do it for this video, and as always, go Colts.